Serious people who have been guests on reality shows such as remodeling, weight loss, porn shows. What really went on? I worked on one of the final Extreme Home Makeover episodes, the 7 in 7 episode where we built 7 houses in 7 days in Joplin, Imo after a huge tornado wiped out a lot of the city. The construction crews were all run by local general contractors and their teams donating their own time, which was really awesome. None of the hosts did any of the real work, they just did a few things for cameras. Typing 10 was a huge doucher bag endeavor. He only came out of his lavish tour bus for a few minutes at a time to shoot his scenes. The week of the shoot he went and got belligerent drunk at a bar in town and made an ass of himself. Oh yeah, and the house I was working on was framed with 8D nails. I wasn't part of the framing crew. Inspector never said anything. I was on Judge Judy back in 2010. Our case was real and handpicked by the production team. We had to pull the case from real court in order to go on her show. The decision of who wins and loses is made up before you even walk into the courtroom set. The audience is all actors paid to sit there. Judge was wearing jeans and slippers under her robe. Also, she's incredibly quiet in real life. As in, I had to really strain to hear her. All in all, I got a paid 3-day vacation to La and stayed in a decent hotel. I also got paid to be on the show, and when I lost their show, paid the other guy for me. Pretty amazing, really. I was on Homes in the second season. We had our weird cement bullshit floor replaced with granite. The crew were very nice and almost everything was authentic with 2 exceptions. Work took about 2.5 weeks and they presented it as being a 2-day job. And Holmes didn't do much work on our place, not for lack of ability, but simply because he was busy as hell. His crew were great, and he chipped in and led where he could. We paid for materials, but the labor was free. My family won a kitchen makeover from the Martha Stewart show. They said they sent us on vacation for the last week of construction, but in reality we stayed home and ate in our basement the whole time. They filmed us driving up the street, had us change our shirts, and then filmed us getting back from the airport. Can't complain though, the kitchen was nice. Edit, just to be clear, we were never promised a vacation. We were aware it was just something they were telling the audience, because it sounded much nicer than we made the meat in their basement. It actually wasn't bad eating in our basement for a while, but I can understand how that sounds bad. I was on What Not to Wear, Amma. I will say the hours were really long, and they don't make you throw everything away. Also Clinton Kelly was one of the nicest people I have ever met. Went above and beyond to help me get clothes that worked, even staying on off camera at the 15th hour of a day, to get the right pants. Stacy was nice too. The weirdest things were the up close reshoots. If you pointed at anything while being filmed, they'd come in afterward and do an up close of your hand doing the motion. We learned towards the end to just stop pointing. Throwaway and probably too late for anybody to see this. I was a contestant on Survivor, Pearl Islands. For the most part nothing is really scripted, although obviously it's cut way out of order for dramatic effect. I learned you can always tell by the pimples that appear and disappear on contestants from scene to scene. Some people are surprised that we were provided toilet paper and tampons plus a spot to shit and throw away the paper, which was good because most people had to get up to blast a diarrhea dump at least 3 times a day from eating rice cooked in stagnant filth water. No matter how much they boiled that water, it still tasted earthy and had grains of dirt in it. I don't know if this counts, but I'll answer anyway. I was on the MTV game show The Substitute that was structured as a reality show. The premise was that some students were in class expecting a substitute teacher, and surprise, the substitute teacher the school hired is actually the host of a game show, and the students participate in it. Well, as you can imagine, this was complete bullshit. We found out that we had a chance to be on the show about 3 months before filming, and every student over 18 in my high school was allowed to apply for a chance to be on it. Out of the 200 or so people that applied, they picked 60, enough for 3 episodes. We had to sign a bunch of contracts and non-disclosure agreements leading up to the actual filming, and then when the day came to film, we piled onto buses and drove to a sketchy little studio in Manhattan. Filming of the 3 episodes took about 8 hours total, and all in all it was an absolute blast, but everything was completely manufactured. If our reactions weren't good enough, then we refilmed the segment and the director would come out and tell us what to do. The host would introduce one of the questions in 5 separate ways and they would pick the best one. Also, we were told to laugh at every single joke, no matter how cheesy. 10/10ths would totally do again, but 0% of it is actual reality. I remember the room had element of like 5 different subjects in it. There were atlases hung on the wall next to biology stuff. Also, there were so many lights. There was no ceiling to the room we were in, just dozens of stage lights. I went on a show called The Year of Making Love, where we filled in an exam to scientifically match us up with our ideal partner. It studied our likes, dislikes and what we looked for in a partner. We all had to drive up to Birmingham or someplace, and there was 1,000 people. 500 women, 500 men. Split into genders. We sat on each side of a hall, when numbers would be called up, and a man and woman would walk onto a stage, meet and walk off down the aisle. My one didn't show up. I'm sure it will be disappointing, and not at all surprising to hear, that Antiques Roadshow is pretty much like it looks. Our dusty crap was not selected for a special segment, but we did have our items appraised. They filmed the segments right out in the middle of where everyone is lined up waiting, so you get to see it unfold. The one thing that they don't show is how much research the appraisers do. I mean, sometimes they'll say on TV I did some research, or I consulted with colleagues, but I think most times a viewer might come away with the impression that the appraisers clap eyes on a piece and immediately understand its significance. But generally they have a laptop and some reference books to turn to, as well as memberships on the fine arts auction sites which show prices realized in previous sales. Also, I was a volunteer on a short-lived Mariya show called School Pride where they renovated public schools. I worked several days/nights at the Detroit area school that they made over. I don't know if it was because the show was new or what, but it did not seem very organized, and a lot of the student volunteers on site didn't have enough to do because no one had a plan for them. I think they must have made a monster effort in the last few days. When the segment aired, they showed some very industrious looking work sessions and those weren't going on at all when I was there. Nice people, though. I'm not sure the producer on site ever got much sleep. My high school was on a couple of episodes of MTV Made. The girl wanted to become more popular in the prom queen. MTV put on a shitload of different events in her name to encourage us to vote for her. What MTV didn't show was that the reason she was unpopular wasn't because she was overweight or in the band or anything, though both were true. She was unpopular because she was a giant bitch, like insanely rude and bitchy. Needless to say, she did not win prom queen. To their credit, the show didn't try to reshoot it to make it look like she won or anything. I was on American Ninja Warrior. All in all, it's legit. The crowd reactions are often from different runs/times. The crowd noise may be doctored here and there, the order of the runs may be changed, and the commentary may be redubbed, but that's all minor TV stuff that's expected. Everyone that worked on the show was incredibly nice. It's clearly a TV show more than a pure athletic competition, but that doesn't detract from it in any way, in my opinion. 10/10ths would keep watching. Late to the party here, but I have a relevant story. I lived near Detroit and had an old ozone generating air purifier called a HomeZone for sale on Craigslist that I had picked up at a garage sale because it looked cool. I got a call from a production company in California that asked if I would be interested in appearing on hardcore porn. The shop is only a few miles from my house. For a chance to sell my item, they offered me $50 for my appearance and I could keep any money that was offered by the shop. I decided to accept, so they gave me a date and time to show up. The place was packed because they shoot the whole season in a couple days then fly back to California. First I did a brief interview with the camera outside the shop about what I was bringing and how much I wanted for it. Then I was ushered inside where they took my item and told me to wait until I was called up. After browsing for a while, I was called up by one of the assistants, and they brought me to the counter where the main guy leg old, with the ponytail was standing. We talked for a bit, and he asked me about where I was from, and explained how the bartering would work. Once the introductions were out of the way, the cameras go on, and he put on his TV character. He seemed like a real nice guy when we were talking but a little sleazy when in character. Mainly the bartering process consisted of him making gay jokes about the name of my purifier and insinuating that I may be a homosexual. He made me an offer for $5 and I turned it down, then went on my way with the $50 from the production company. I don't have cable, so I have never watched the show, but my parents watch it and have not seen me on it yet. I was on Made, an MTV show about turning nerds into pickup artists / charming people / whatever term suits your fancy. Well, technically, rather, I was at a party being hosted for the main star of the show. My family and I happened to be vacationing at the Atlantis Resort in Nassau, an island in the Bahamas, when we heard about MTV hosting this party, and 15-year-old me figured it would be fun to go. As I walked through the entrance to the party, I saw a pretty girl on a seat in the corner. I asked her what she was doing, and she said something along the lines of, "They asked me to wait here." From being at the party and later watching on TV, I learned that this was the girl that the star of the show got to go on a date with. In other words, MTV spoon-fed a date to a guy on a show about how to get a date. I can't blame the girl for agreeing to it. She got to be on TV and all she had to do was go to a nice dinner by the dolphin enclosure with a fat nerd. Not the most exciting thing in the world, but confirmed to me that, yes, reality TV is as fixed as everyone believes. When I was 10, I was on this show, The F Word. My mum put in an application to be taught how to cook. This was one of the 10-minute things aged within the episode as a side thing, because she was getting lazy, and we'd always just buy takeaways lol. She got accepted, and it was the most fun day. Gordon Ramsay and his crew and him showed up one morning, and spent the day with us. We lived in a tiny flat without a dining table, so they bought a beautiful one with them, and let us keep it after, as well as lots of other goodies. But apart from that, he was such a wonderful guy to us, and when Gordon had finished teaching my mum how to cook paella, we all sat down at the table, my mum, him, me, one of my mum's friends, and ate it all together, and discussed random shit for like an hour, while the crew packed everything up. I know the episode is on YouTube, but I really can't remember the episode. I'll throw with some time, could prob find it. It was 12 years ago though. We had a copy, but it was misplaced while moving. I do have a picture of him, my mum and I though. Such a great guy. Did the home Makiava show when it was in Philly. The neighbors make out great. Some of the neighbors were sent away on trips too, so we could take over their yards for storage and setting up a cabinet shop. They also received free furniture, and the surrounding neighborhood can go to the hospitality area and eat some free food. But as others have stated, the construction is horrible. They use leaf blowers and hair dryers to get the joint compound to dry faster. After the show aired, the bed that could lower into the floor was permanent disabled because someone could get crushed under it. House was robbed a week after the show aired, and the family ended up moving 5 years later, which I heard is the amount of time you agree to not sell the house as a condition of being on the show. I realize I'm late to the party, but my family's house was featured on a season of This Old House. The biggest thing in terms of what really went on is that we're very cautious, and rightly so, about the promise of any free stuff. Unlike some other shows, on This Old House we paid the full price for them to do the construction basically on a contractor basis, but the show does have certain materials that get donated as part of advertising / sponsorship relationships. Now, when that stuff is donated, it's free for the show, but it gets taxed as a gift to the people receiving it, i.e. us. So my parents were very cautious in terms of working with an accountant, and particularly at the design stage, to make sure that what the architect was proposing wouldn't bankrupt us. Some of the previous old houses had some horror stories that we'd heard rumors about on that front. The advantage from our perspective wasn't that it was any cheaper, it was that the contractor team was exceptionally good, and b, that everything would get done on time. And that was certainly worth it. As for the reality aspect, well, I don't think This Old House tries to go in for the drama as much as the other reality shows, but they did feed my parents lines about the construction. My parents are not DIY people, so when they are talking about switches and wood grain and all this other stuff, that was fed to them. All in all, a great experience, and we are still in touch with some of them. Roger Cook, in particular, is awesome.